I just got a little cheat sheet from the panel, because the panel didn't get to mention a few things, so I'm going to mention it for them. Plus there are a few things I wanted to say myself. But I also wanted to say that at this point I really did prepare something much more capacious, but I don't think I have much to add, because it was all said here, basically, especially this last panel and the reactions to it. So I don't want to duplicate too much, but I guess, well, first to continue after the panel, there was a point that I think is worth mentioning here that the panel didn't get to make, which is that we started from a small, the impetus for this conference was a small, well, one particular event. In that sense, it's small, but actually we managed to see how this one particular event relates to many other events and many other situations, linguistic situations, such as national, international, pedagogical aspects, really local aspects, community aspects, of course, scholarly research, all of this. So this, one particular event really is connected to everything, and we managed to cover it all here. So that is, I think, a very significant thing, and I think it's also important that in the second day we covered a lot of other linguistic issues besides the particular Arizona situation, but other languages and cultures. So it just shows how fruitful this topic is, and perhaps with the additional support from the deans, we may be able to turn this into an annual.
I knew it was all about
Well, but actually that brings this to what I was, one of the things I was going to mention is that it's 2 months and maybe a week ago that during the graduation ceremonies that this idea began. And we received tremendous, overwhelming support from the UCLA community. And this really has to be acknowledged. It has to be acknowledged. You see the supporting units on the program. But I think there's about 20 units. I think a couple of them are still missing because the program went to print. And so, and Dean is one of them. Dean Stoll is one of them. And alumni, we have alumni who supported this. And it's amazing. It's amazing how people really just rose to the occasion. And of course, I think the main reason is because the topic was so close to us and so important nationally, and because people felt like this is our raison d'etre in a way, and not just our department or our field, but really academia. This is what universities are for. So I think that this just is really proven by the amount of tremendous support we have. And I just want to bring it back to I think it's the UCLA homepage says that UCLA belongs to the people of California. So that's a nice logo. And of course it has various implications. It also means that the people of California decide how much or how little money to give to UC or UCLA. So there are various aspects to it. But to take it really seriously, what it means that people of California are the speakers of more than 220 languages for LA alone. Okay, so that's something that my former colleague, had a course on, languages of UCLA, of LA. And in there, there were, 200 some languages, or language groups. Language is a tricky thing to determine whether, whether there's one language that's spoken in Yugoslavia or whether there are 3 languages, Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian, because it depends on whether or not you have an army to go with your dialect. So it is a tricky situation sometimes, but nevertheless, with any margin of error, 220 plus means that there's a lot, right? And it means all these are communities, and some communities may have 1,000 people, some communities may have hundreds of thousands. So what this means is that language is really very important for us. It's a daily fact. It also means that most of those people whose first language is not English are bilingual, however you define bilingualism. Okay, but they are at least proficient to some extent, at least in two languages. Right? So bilingualism, multilingualism, multiculturalism, and language issues are all part of our daily lives. We often forget because we take it for granted. We take language for granted in general. As I think I mentioned earlier this morning, is that we think that anybody can be an expert in language. All those things, we're not quite aware of all the problems. But I think this means that it is legitimate for us to really pay attention to this, to language and its role in the society in all its aspects, from the type of aspects that unfortunately have now to be dealt with due to the situation in Arizona, to all other aspects. And I hope that what we achieved here through the public conference is precisely this. I think it's very important that this was a public conference because, well, scholars talk to scholars many times a year. And, there is general criticism that we stay in ivory tower. Well, I think that maybe it's time to step out of it. And I think that this subject, our field, is particularly suitable for that because language is so intrinsic to our lives. So at the end, I would like to really give one more round of applause to our organizing committee.